welcome to episode 56 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. It has officially been 1 year that this podcast has been on the air. I can't even believe it. A year. Literally last year, May 14th, this podcast premiered, and I cannot believe it has been a year. A year! That's just crazy. Anyways, but let's talk about this week's episode because I'm still going strong. So here we go. In this week's episode, I'm going to talk about how to weave weather into your story because the weather is a really great tool that can enhance both your setting and your characters. So with no further ado, let's get down to it. Let's talk about the weather. Alrighty then, today's episode will be in 2 parts, as it has been for every episode since that very first episode back in May 14th of last year. It will be in 2 parts. First part will be how we can subtly weave weather into the setting. And then in part 2, I want to talk about how we can kind of weave the weather subtly with your characters. So let's get down to it. Part 1. What are some subtle ways to actually weave the weather in for your setting? Now, before we get to that, you need to already know kind of the big picture of the weather. So what I mean by that is, what part of the world is your story taking place in? And more specifically, in what city is your story taking place in? At least the part of your story. And if you're going from city to city, then you'll need to do this for each of the cities that you go to. But you should know what the main weather is in the city that you are writing about. So, for example, if you're writing about, Las Vegas in July, it is a very specific kind of weather that we have here in Vegas in July. It is a very different kind of weather than it would be in, say, July in most of Michigan. Very different than it would be in July in, say, Northern California, and very different than it would be in, say, the Florida Keys. So depending on where you are and what part of the world, I'm from the United States, so I'm talking about the United States. But if you're in the UK, I am sure that the weather in inland UK is rather different than it probably is in, say, London. And so your reader may not know this. And that is the big part of knowing where your story is taking place, is that you need to know the weather and what it's like in that specific area. So for example, I wrote a story one time that took place in New York. Now I'm from New York. I'm from Vegas, born and raised. I've lived here my whole life. And I was writing about the story in New York, and I knew that the story was going to take place in April. I have no idea what the weather is like in New York City in April because I have never been there in April. So I did a lot of research on the weather, and it's, not really exactly what I was expecting in a way, and it can be, very different in April. That's true of here in Vegas too. April can be a variety of different weathers. Sometimes you wake up and you're one season, and then you wake up and it's a different season. And it's like that in a lot of different cities and a lot of different times of year, which brings me to, you should know what season is it in your city that you are talking about. So if you're writing New York in April, it's going to be very different than New York in August and very different than New York in January. So knowing like the month, and it really can make a big difference, the season that it is for your setting and as well as your characters, which I'm going to get to in part 2. But so that's the big thing. Know what city and what season and what the weather is like in that particular city during that particular season. Now, once you have that, let's break it down to like the small scene. Each scene that you're doing that is going to be even outside, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an outside scene. It could be an inside scene. Well, if it's raining outside, then that's something that, you would want to know. If it's that rainy time of year, then there's thunder outside, and that could affect your indoor scenes as well. But is your scene taking place at day or night? temperatures are different in day or night. So the setting's going to be different day or night. Is it hot? If it's hot, is it a humid hot or is it a dry hot? If you come to Vegas in July, it is going to be hot. It doesn't even matter what day in July you come. It's going to be hot, and it's most likely going to be a very dry heat. Now, once in a while, we get some monsoonal moisture, and then suddenly now it's humid out. All the Las Vegans are freaking out because it's so muggy outside. It's like 35% humidity. It's a lot for us in Vegas. But if it's 110 and 35% humidity, it is really hot. But for people like me who travel to, say, Florida, and, it's 90% humidity, even though the temperature is only 90, it feels so much hotter to someone like me. So that is a big part of it. Kind of keep this in mind. Is it snowing outside, but is it like snow? Like we get snow in Vegas once every, 10 years or something. It snows, it sticks on the ground, we make snowmen, and the next day it melts. That's our idea of snow. That is not the same snow as, say, Buffalo, New York. All right. So is it snowing outside? And if so, how much? What are we talking about here? Is it windy? Boy, we've had some brutal winds in Vegas this past weekend. It actually destroyed my garden cover. I was so sad. I bought that little, mesh netting to put over the garden. Gone, ripped off. It broke the PVC pipe I had. Oh, it's just, we get some pretty brutal winds. Is it windy like that in the city where yours is taking place? And is it windy in that scene? And I will tell you that can affect, the setting. So think about these things. And what is important that you need to keep in mind, you are writing the story as though your reader has never been to the city. Now, that does not mean that you write this big, long exposition explaining everything about the weather. It just means that you need to figure out how to subtly weave the weather in so that your reader gets a better idea of what the setting is like in the city without you just straight out telling them how it is in exposition. And by the way, if you're writing sci-fi and fantasy, this is crucial because you are building a world your reader knows absolutely nothing about. So weather is crucial because your reader has no idea what the weather is like in this fabricated place you have created. So you don't want to just mention it, on page 1 and then you're done with the weather. It kind of needs to be woven throughout the story so we are continually, as readers, being exposed to what the setting is like that your character is in, because remember, it is a place your reader cannot fathom without your subtle details. And by the way, there are many, many ways to subtly weave the weather in. You can say simple things like, the snow boots were lined up by the door, or she grabbed an umbrella on her way out the door. I mean, these are not explaining to the reader exactly or telling the reader exactly what is going on with the weather outside, but it is showing the reader how this is going very, very subtly, right? Snow boots imply it's snowing, or an umbrella implies it might be raining or it could rain. And these are just really subtle ways to keep the weather in the setting to remind the reader of what the setting is like. Now, before we get to part 2 and how to kind of use your characters to kind of weave the weather into the story, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. And if you are new to the show, every week, I give you a crazy law. And this is a law that once upon a time in history, it was a real law. Whether it still is, I don't know, but it was once upon a time. And your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to write a short story based on the law. Now, this week's law takes place here in my home state, just not my home city. In Reno, Nevada, it is illegal to conceal a spray-painted shopping cart in your basement. Okay, there you go. There's your challenge. Write a short story about that. Should be kind of fun, I think. All right, but let's move on to part 2 and ways you can subtly weave the weather with your characters. So let's talk big picture first. Okay, I already talked to you about how important it is to know the city, where your story is taking place. Now, here's the thing. is your main characters and other main characters, but let's talk about your main character. Is your main character from that city? Because if they are, then they are acclimated to whatever the weather is. And if other characters are not, that is definitely going to be a point of not contention, but a point that is definitely going to be friction between your characters when it comes to the weather. If your character is me and it's July in Las Vegas, I am 100% acclimated to this, 110 degree temperature, and my skin's used to it. I'm used to it. But if you're visiting from like Michigan, it is hot in Vegas. It's like 110, 115. It's hot, but it's dry. Like a lot of times our humidity will be like 8%. 9%. If we get double digits in July, it's like, ooh, it's like 12% humidity outside. Oh my gosh, I'm sweating. People who visit in July have no idea even if they're visiting from places that are hot, like Florida or Atlanta, they are not accustomed to this kind of dry heat. Their skin dries up, they dehydrate. You have no idea how many cases of heat stroke we have every single year in Las Vegas during the summer. Tourists just come and they aren't acclimated to it, and they don't drink enough water. They drink alcohol and not enough water. They drink coffee and not enough water. And then they get dizzy and they pass out. It happens so often. It's ridiculous in Las Vegas because people aren't acclimated to it. So if your character has just moved to Vegas or they're not from Vegas, then that's something that is a major part of their literally day-to-day life because they're not used to it. And that'll be true of other characters in your book if they're not accustomed to it. Now, if I were to visit New York in like July, or maybe not even July, if I was to visit New York in like February and it's snowing, I would have absolutely no idea how to deal with the snow. I would be afraid to go outside, and I certainly would never drive. Oh my gosh, I would never drive in that because I'm not used to it. So understand that's going to affect my character if my character is visiting a place with snow. All right, now let's break it down to even smaller. Every scene, day, night. Is it day or is it night? Now, if I'm visiting Southern California, for me personally, the days are definitely, I'm going to the beach. It's hot. I'm wearing a t-shirt, I'm shorts. I'm walking around. And then at night, I get cold. People from there may not, but I would. So if you have a character that's visiting a place like that, just know that they're going to need a sweater at night because, that ocean breeze to them would be chilly, and where it may not be for someone who is native. And let's talk about things like, the movies. I know that sounds like what? The weather in the movies? Oh, yeah. Let me explain. It's July in Las Vegas. I'm telling a friend, hey, let's meet at the movies. Okay. Most of our movie theaters here in Las Vegas are actually in casinos. So if I'm meeting a friend at the movies in July, I'm bringing a sweater, which sounds ridiculous because it's 110 degrees. At night, when you go to the movies at 8 o'clock, it's still over 100 degrees outside. And yet here I am carrying a sweater. Why? Because in Las Vegas, in the summer, the casinos crank the AC on so high that it is cold. Now, people visiting oftentimes are just like, it feels so good because it's so hot outside. But for natives like me, it's cold, and I bring a sweater because I get chilly in that very, very cold AC because my body is acclimated to the heat. So these are just really, really subtle ways that you can not only do character development, but also weave setting in with your characters because your character's acclimated to it. Other people aren't. It's a great way to develop characters and develop your setting simultaneously and subtly. And then there's also, things that the characters do themselves. So for example, if it's windy outside, I have long hair, I am going to put my hair in braids or a ponytail because I do not want my hair to look like Einstein when I come out. All right. So those are just some very subtle things. If it's windy, your character has long hair, they are going to be accustomed to braiding it, putting in a ponytail, wearing a hat, something to keep their hair from going all over the place. So those are just very subtle things that also are character development and setting. So it's kind of cool. Now, a couple other things. The weather can affect your character in a couple of other ways. So for example, if it's raining outside, I can tell you just because my mom lives with me, she's 88 years old, and anytime it rains outside, it really aggravates her arthritis. To the point where if we have plans to go out, she may not be able to because her arthritis is giving her so much pain. So that is something that the weather can actually affect some of your characters as well. Also, weather has a huge impact on a lot of people's moods. When it's gloomy outside, some people are really, react to that and become gloomy as well. Whereas if it's hot outside, that could again affect people's disposition. So the weather can affect people's moods. It can affect them physically. And these are things that you should keep in mind as you're writing your story and that you should know about your characters. All right. I hope I've given you at least some things to think about and weaving weather. And this should be, by the way, throughout the whole book, not just scene 1, act 1, scene 1, and then never again the weather. Weeks have gone by and you've never talked about the weather again. Keep weaving it into your story to keep the setting alive. And that is both true for any kind of story, whether you're writing sci-fi or fantasy, because that's definitely something you need to do. But if you're writing any kind of fiction, but even if you're writing memoir, talking about the weather and how you have, it has affected you in your memoir is another way to kind of even get to your reader to get to know you as a person even that much better. So I hope I've given you some ideas about weaving weather into your story. Remember, I drop a new episode every week and I'm so excited. It's been a whole year. We are plowing through year 2. And by plowing through, I mean, I've done 1 episode because this is only the first week of week 2. But you know what I mean. I will be here next Wednesday. So until then, be safe and I will see you all next week.